It's Kathryn Janicek here. I am a media and public speaking expert, and I'm talking today about crisis communications and what you can do to prepare for crisis at your company, at your organization, at your nonprofit, at your school, depending on what kind of organization that you actually head up. I'm going to teach you some of the first steps you can take during a media crisis for you or a client of yours. I also want to teach you what you can do before you have a media crisis. Okay, so there's plenty of things that you can do, and I'm going to take you through those before you ever have a media crisis. So if you do have one, it is less severe and it moves quickly and it goes away. Like a quick storm, just a quick 1 hour rainfall. That's what we like to do with our crises, okay? Just kind of comes in, we fix it, and it goes away. But there's a lot of things that you have to do in the front end in order for it to just go away that quickly, okay? All right, so I'm shutting off the sound because a lot of you are retweeting this live video, and I really, really appreciate this. So if you find any value in this video, please like this video so I know that you found value, and share it. Why listen to what I'm talking about? You know, what makes me the expert? I have been in television for 20 plus years. I have extensive crisis communications experience being a television producer. I've had to manage things very quickly. I've also seen when things don't go right and how companies could have dealt with it faster, better, and the crisis would have disappeared a lot faster, you know, and that obviously would have been great for them. I've seen it done the wrong way and I've seen it done the right way. So my job is to teach my clients how to do it the right way. My other crisis experience has to do with the 9/11 coverage, the blackout coverage that went from Detroit. And then when I worked in Minneapolis, I was taken from a television station to help with law enforcement at Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. And I helped there to train police departments throughout Minnesota, throughout that state, and the Sheriff's Department of Hennepin County. During my time at the Sheriff's office there in Minneapolis or in Hennepin County, I handled the 35W bridge collapse that happened in the Mississippi River in Minneapolis. Because I was the public information officer, the communications director of the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department, and the 35W bridge collapsed in the Mississippi River, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department that was its area. And as communications director at Hennepin County Sheriff's Department, I was in charge of all of the local, the national, and the international media. Therefore, in a few days, when the Army came and when the Navy SEALs came, I was the one who coordinated all of the public information officers for the local police department, for the sheriff's office, and then for the federal response. So I have dealt with crisis in person. I don't just teach it. I teach it from first account. I've seen it done the wrong way. I watched Spokespeople in that case do it the wrong way. And I now train as a former television producer and now having my own company as a consultant. I train CEOs and entire companies on how to handle crisis. Things that I'm going to take you through today are things that you can do. So if you have, if you're a law firm or if you're a financial firm or accounting firm and you have, you know, I'm talking about not just a company that only has itself to protect, but if you are a major firm that has a lot of different clients, these are things that if you have a client that has a major media crisis, these are things that you can teach them, share with them to help them. They need to do some things on the front end, and then you can also teach them on what to do if and when that media crisis actually happens. Every organization is vulnerable to a crisis. If you ignore it, it doesn't just disappear. If you don't create a strategy, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Just like buying insurance, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be that flood or there's not going to be that car crash. This crisis plan could be your insurance to make sure that your company doesn't lose hope from the stakeholders or doesn't lose money because your stock crashes. This can help your company, and it can also help your clients and to support them. And also it will help your clients because you won't be in a long-term media crisis, right? And trust me, if you don't prepare for this, you will be worse off. There will be more damage if you don't prepare for crisis than if you do prepare. So some people might say, well, gosh, this is going to be a lot of time of brainstorming. What kind of crisis might happen? Maybe possibly bringing in an external consultant to help us. Sure, it's going to cost money, but it's going to cost a lot more money if you don't prepare for a crisis. There are very basic steps of an effective crisis communications plan. It's not difficult, but these are steps that will minimize your damage later. A little tiny example is, if there's a crisis in your company tomorrow and, someone comes out and has radio equipment or television equipment is following around your CEO, and your CEO either goes in hiding for a couple days, doesn't say anything, or say your CEO says no comment to the media and puts up their hand and they're just like, no comment, no comment. How many times have you seen that where, a warehouse is closing and they're laying off, 50 employees and a whole neighborhood or a whole city is going to go bankrupt because of it. And the boss is just like, no comment, no comment. Well, it looks like something went wrong instead of, maybe there's no need for that X gadget. If there was some kind of crisis communications plan, they would have had some messaging ready, and I'll take you. But now when you see that CEO hiding or saying, no comment, please don't bother me, putting their hand up, it destroys you in the court of public opinion. That no comment means I'm hiding something. That's what the public thinks. They think I'm hiding something. I did something wrong. I might be criminally negligent. So it hurts you in the general public. And you've seen companies do this the wrong way and then get hurt when it comes to that. So are you serious about crisis preparedness? Are you ready to learn a little bit about how you can prepare for a crisis and create a crisis strategy for your company? We're going to dig in right now. And thank you so much, Christopher, for your question. Christopher asks from Chicago, what are your top 3 tips that you advise local companies to do to prepare for a crisis? Awesome question, Chris. I am going to go through these right now. All right, so this is we're talking about local companies, national companies, what you can do to prepare for a crisis. Okay, let's get into it. The first one, it is very, very, very important to create a plan. Okay, brainstorm with your major players at your company, whether it's local. What are the potential crises that could actually occur at your organization? What could happen? What could happen that could create a big media buzz that might not be positive? So you have to sit down and really plan those out, think about what could happen. Now, what's really interesting about that brainstorming is you may realize that some of these situations are preventable and you might be able to put up things right away and prevent them. So this brainstorming is going to be extremely valuable to your company because there might be some things that you could just change with your operations or your delivery or whatever that might create that to not be an issue anymore. The second thing is you can think about ways to respond now because you brainstormed them. So what happens if we have to lay off 150 people in 6 months if we don't get this funding that we need? All right, that would be a major crisis. People would want to do a story on us. What are some of the possible responses we can have? What are the best in case, worst case scenarios? What are our messages? So you're going to plan for that. Those are easy things that you can plan for when you know that there possibly could be a crisis coming up because of the fact that you possibly could be laying off, or you know that there's something coming down as far as a vote in the Senate and maybe there'll be less funding for your nonprofit. There's a lot of good examples there. So next step in our crisis communications plan is to identify your crisis team. This is really important because sometimes people automatically think that, for example, who's going to be the spokesperson? Sometimes people think right away, it's going to be our CEO if it's a big crisis, but your CEO might not be the perfect spokesperson because sometimes, and I'll talk about this in training, but I've been with CEOs where they're amazing in front of 2,000, 3,000 people or rallying their company, but when they get in front of a woman or a man with a camera, they just melt. They freak out. There's something in them that innately just they can't handle it. So you'll find that out, and we'll talk about that next as far as training, but you have to identify who's going to be your spokesperson. And it's not always going to be one person. It could be you might have a communications director or public information officer, that if it's a smaller crisis, they're the ones who send out a message, or they get up in front. Like when I was the public information officer at the sheriff's department in Minneapolis, I would often address issues. A body was found. A sheriff's deputy had a DUI. There's something that happened. I don't want my CEO up there addressing that unless it's something major that he or she has to. If it's something that I can handle and he or she does not have to be the face of that crisis, it's important for me as that spokesperson or that public relations exec to take that on as my crisis. I will be the face of it, not my CEO. So do you see how that's important? So the CEO may not be your spokesperson if it's a big crisis. And you have to determine that depending on the talent and depending on what is the crisis. I hope that helps clear that up, because a lot of people automatically think it's the CEO is a spokesperson. The firm's public relations executive is on your crisis team. So whoever is handling your public relations, that person is on your crisis team. Any legal counsel, if you have outside or internal legal counsel, that person's on your crisis communications team. Who answers the phones at your office? That person, if you have a small company, that person probably should be on your crisis communications team, and that person has to be in on everything and can never be forgotten, because sometimes not me, but sometimes companies may think, oh, that person's just the receptionist. That person is handling the frontline communications for your company, and the person who's doing all of the social media. So those people have to be looped in when there is a crisis plan, because those people are often going to be the people who react first. The CEO may know last, because your marketing person who does your social media will hear about something that happens possibly first. The person who answers the phones at your office may possibly know first. So those are all the people who need to be on your crisis communications team. And if your in-house PR executive doesn't have that crisis communications experience, you need to retain independent consultant with that specialty. Someone like me, so there's plenty of people who have this kind of crisis communications training. The next tip is choose and train your spokespeople. Okay, this is big. Make sure people know that they are the spokespeople. Make sure outlets that they're supposed to talk to. So if there's your social media marketing, online marketing person might be the spokesperson for that. So they are the person that's the person that responds. Okay. Your CEO might be the person that's just doing national and local TV and radio. Your CEO might be the person who is doing quotes for the newspaper in other digital outlets. It's important to talk to employees and make sure that they know that there is a crisis plan if something was to happen, and that they are not the spokespeople. Now, they are not the authorized spokespeople who will actually speak for the company. What I mean by that is if Channel 5 pulls up to your bakery and there's a fire, maybe they've been trained not to give sound to that local television station. They need to be trained to wait for the boss. They need to be trained to wait for you if you own that bakery. Maybe it's something like that's the plan you put forth, because you just don't want them getting up and going, oh, I don't know, our ovens have always been faulty. I saw sparks 2 days ago. So there might just be things that you don't want your employees talking about. I don't know. These are things that I'm making up, but it could be important for you to think about. So now with the employees, when it comes to them, it's really difficult, because with social media, they do become spokespeople, because your employees might have on their page where they work. They're going to talk about if there's an issue, if they're a United employee, for example, what happened a couple months ago, they might say, gosh, I'm kind of embarrassed to be working for United. They are going to talk. So it's really important that even though they might not be blessed as authorized spokespeople, that they are told how important they are as spokespeople, and that they need to be given the information right away. And then you give them that respect so they can help take care of rumors that are out there and definitely not spread rumors if they have heard things. So I'm going to address this in a minute when I talk about monitoring, but it's really important when we talk about employees is that if you don't want them to be the official spokespeople, you make sure they know that you'd like to have their backing when it comes to monitoring and making sure that they're not, they're helping you by letting you know if there's any rumors, et cetera, that they see on social media or they just hear in the neighborhood if you're a local company. Each official spokesperson should be definitely trained, pre-screened. You should have backup spokespeople because you don't know how long you might have a crisis issue. When I was handling the crisis, the 35W bridge collapse in Minneapolis, it went for 15, 20 days because we had press conferences after that. But we had bodies in the Mississippi River, and I was the only one who was blessed, and the sheriff as the spokespeople. So for the first couple of days until we came up with who's my backup, the sheriff and I were absolutely burnt out because the first day we're up for 30 hours on the scene, and then we'd go back and maybe sleep for 2 hours in a trailer or back home for a couple hours, and then we're back on. And our phones never stopped ringing. So it's really important to come up, take it from me, come up with your backup spokespeople, because the worst could happen, and you don't want a CEO to be burned out, because when you're burned out and tired, that's when you start to make mistakes, and those mistakes could really hurt you on air and in the court of public opinion. So you want people fresh, and you want really good backups trained and pre-screened when it comes to your spokespeople. And like I said before, the CEO might not even be the right person. She might be a brilliant leader. He might be a genius when it comes to organizationally, but they just might not cut it in the media. So you really, that pre-screening is really, really important. Our next topic when it comes to creating that crisis plan is notification and monitoring. You want to decide how you're going to notify your stakeholders and the public. So you might, times in history that people just used email, for example, and they didn't use text when that was available. That's not great because not everybody is checking their email at all times. So it's really important to talk about, this is the pre-planning for a crisis. If there's a crisis, how are we going to notify our employees or other stakeholders, the public? I would suggest, if it's right for you, making sure to, social media, use email, use text. There's obviously a ton of communication modes at your fingertips. So please, it's important on this pre-crisis to establish how you're going to do it. Set up maybe even those messages so you can just press a button and it goes out. You kind of have some things maybe already ready. So you have an email that goes out if there's a crisis. If you have, I keep going back to a warehouse, but if you have a chance that your warehouse has fires a lot or whatever, it might be important to have something where it's already set up. I'm sure major school systems have this, where when they have snow days, they have something that's already planned that they just press a button and an email goes out or a text goes out. So it's pre-planning for a crisis. And a snow day is definitely a crisis because it changes everything for a parent when their kid is off school. So you need to plan on how you are going to actually notify people when there is a crisis. And then monitor it. So you make sure that not only is someone going to be sitting at the phones, but they're going to be on email checking that. They're going to be on every single one of your social media platforms, because monitoring it means that they possibly could catch a negative trend that could turn into a crisis. So there could be a rumor that's all of a sudden all over your Facebook page or all over Twitter. But unless you're monitoring that and you see when it crops up and see right away, you can't fix that before it turns into a crisis itself. So you want to make sure that those rumors don't turn into fact for the public. And also really make sure that your employees are doing that for you too. Make sure that they know that that's part of their crisis communication, is that they need to help you by letting you know if they see anything that they've been monitoring for you. I personally use obviously social media, but Google Alerts and Hootsuite. When I have a new client, I set up alerts so I can see if there's anything that triggers, so I can let them know and we can act. And those two things are free. There's obviously many other ways to do this, but I just like to mention the free ones because why not? And then I also want to just make sure that I talked about your frontline people, the people who are answering your phones, the admins, the receptionists. Those people are super important, and they need to know how to reach your crisis team, your spokesperson. So if they hear something, or if they see something, or if they're being told something, or if they have questions, they can get to a top person right away so they can help dispel that kind of rumor. Okay, the next plan is to develop your crisis messages, okay? These are things you can do way in advance because you know what's going on in your company, okay? So if you have a hotel, you might, and if there's a fire or if there's a flood, you know that if something happens, you're going to want to react quickly and just at least say, we've implemented our crisis communications plan, or we've implemented our crisis response plan, and we place the highest priority on our staff and our guests, or our guests and our staff, or our customers and our staff. Our thoughts are with those who are injured and their families tonight or this morning. Here's one that you can have ready. We will be releasing additional information as soon as it becomes available. We will be briefing you, the media, here again in an hour, and posting the information as we receive it on all of our social media platforms. I'm going to read that one more time because this is a really good general one, and it shows how open you are and how you're not hiding anything. And it's not like, hey, if we get more information, we'll come out and tell you. Or if we get more information, you'll be the first to know, because that sounds kind of snarky. You want to actually, give specifics. So I'll say that again. We will be releasing additional information as soon as it becomes available. We'll be briefing you, the media, here again in an hour, and posting the information on social media as soon as we receive it. So you're telling people that you're not hiding anything. As soon as we know more, we are going to post it, and we are going to update you, the media. This would be given kind of if you're giving a live press conference or something. You come out, you say, we're aware of what happened. We have our crisis plan in motion. We feel, our hearts go out to those who have been injured and their families, and we will be releasing more information as soon as it becomes available. We'll be briefing you again. And obviously to you at home, we will be updating our social media as soon as we receive more information. And we will be doing that at all hours at night. You make sure you show that we are really concerned and we want you to have this information, and we're not keeping anything from you. So that's very, very important to have those kind of messages already done and already just part of your crisis communications plan, because see how that works for anything that you may do. Quick updates like that, they're very important to keep neighbors happy, to keep your employees knowing that, hey, my company's got it all put together. You just look like a very well-oiled machine when you put out those messages right away, and not be the no comment company, right? Okay, the next tip is you want to assess and adapt. So now you've had these key messages that you created before the crisis, and now the crisis is happening, and you want to assess the crisis situation. So how, what kind of messages do we need to put out there? Who is going to give those messages? We've trained these people, our spokespeople, who's the appropriate one. You might need to adapt them. What do my employees need to know about this crisis? And I would always keep it very simple. No more messages. You don't want to get crazy with having all these other ones. The first couple days, just stick to 2 or 3 key messages, because those are the things that people are going to remember. I've had so many CEOs who have said like, oh, I was on the phone for about an hour with that reporter and none of the important stuff got in the article. Thing is that they didn't stay on message. They went in and they talked about everything from their childhood to how they started the company to the future of the company, but they didn't stick to the 3 important messages that they really wanted to get into that article. And that's their own fault because they went everywhere but the interview. But if you stick to those messages in a crisis, you want to get out good news, that's when you'll actually see your message show up in print or show up in a soundbite. So it's very important to stick to those kind of messages and rehearse them and know what are the things, first and foremost, that you want to get out there. All right, so the next one is kind of like your post-mortem. We say that in well, not every television station says that, but your post-crisis. What is your post-show? What are you going to do better or do differently next? Inspect. You want to really inspect what happened, how quickly you communicated the crisis, how quickly you got a CEO or your spokesperson out there in front of the cameras, what other things that maybe you need to have prepared for the next time. Maybe the CEO needs to keep a fresh, clean shirt in the cabinet every day in her office because of something like this. Maybe you found that it was a 30-hour day and heels were just not the greatest thing. Maybe we need to have go bags for everybody the next time, or, you know, just little things like that. Or there could be bigger things. Like maybe that is not the appropriate spokesperson. That person completely crumbled, melted, broke down in front of the camera, cannot handle it. There'll be a different spokesperson the next time. Great CEO, but may not be the right person when it comes to on air being the spokesperson. So it has nothing to do with their organizational qualities or anything else or their brilliance. Some people it's very difficult to get in front of that big piece of equipment and a reporter because they just second guess everything they say. So it is completely natural for some people just not to be great in front of a camera. So that is a part of your after the crisis, taking a look, making sure that you're ready for the next crisis if there's going to be one. What have you learned from it? You might learn some things that are going to help your bottom line as a company. I hope that it's a small crisis and it went away quickly because you reacted very quickly to this. And yeah, and that's the biggest thing is if you react quickly, it lessens the chance of this becoming a big thing. I keep going back to United just because it was such a long media. It could have been a lot faster. And I did blog about it when it happened. Little things like CEO getting up right away that next day. This happened on a Sunday. The video was released on a Sunday. Getting up that next day and saying, we are looking into this and we are going to make it right, you know, instead of just kind of disappearing, not being available for the media. And it looked like they were denying and it looked like they were in the wrong because that video kept playing and playing and playing. So you want to make sure that you can get in and get out of a media crisis very quickly. There's nothing bad about the media, but they're trying to get a story and you just want to get in and get out quickly. I would absolutely love to hear more from you. So again, we are doing these every single Thursday at 1 p.m. Central. So if there is a topic that you would like me to address, if there is a question about any of the past ones, let me know because I can do them in a live or I can just answer you privately. No big deal. I'm here for free advice. And again, I'm here every single Thursday at 1 p.m. Central. So definitely mark it in your calendar and make sure you're here. And if you found any value, please, any value at all of this live, I would love for you to please like it and share it because it will really show me that these are helping. And I would love to keep doing these every Thursday at 1 p.m. for you. And that's it. I hope you have a great rest of your week and start preparing so you're not caught without a plan in a crisis. And I will see you again next Thursday at 1 o'clock.